Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today I wanted to outline the build that I'm intending to take into Zizaran's hard mode Path of Exile Gauntlet event that's coming up starting in about 18 hours after this video goes live. And I'm going to go, at least to start off with, as a champion, and the Call of Steel champion build that I think is going to be probably the most popular build in this league. However, there's a number of ways that I've planned out this character that are quite a bit different to how you would normally plan out such a build in a normal softcore league environment. So, the things that need to be said that have really affected the way that the build is being designed. Firstly, the Gauntlet is a hardcore event. This means that there is a higher than usual importance placed upon defense, and some of the things that you can do in softcore, like saying, oh, you know what, I'm just going to do Act 4 with no resist. Yeah, I'll probably die 3 or 4 times. Who cares? I'll fix that up at endgame. That is not an option in hardcore. Secondly, it's solo self-found. This means that you're going to need to find or create resistance gear yourself. And that can be quite difficult to do, given, I mean, you do get a fair amount of currency. It is still going to have all of the heist mechanics involved. So you'll be able to get a fairly large amount of currency compared to the core game. But you will be making do with less than you normally have. And one thing that this is combined to make me do is I am focusing a lot on getting resistances wherever I can get them. I'm not going to have the option to simply trade for items that have got exceptionally good lots of resistances on them. So, when I hit maps, I'm not going to be in a position to say, hey, let's go and buy a 25% chaos resist, 2 times 30% elemental resistance, 2 stone ring that also has life on it. That's just simply not going to be an option, and I have to make do with what I can get. Additionally, the Gauntlet has a number of nasty map mods that are in effect all through the storyline content. These are monsters act 20% faster, so as basically monsters have onslaught, although it's not called that. Players have 40% reduced resistances. This is elemental and chaos. And essentially it's like you're permanently under the effect of both a despair curse and also an elemental weakness curse. This is really impactful and puts more strain on the gearing. So again, that's another reason to prioritize picking up some of these quite bad nodes that give you large chunks of elemental resistances on the tree. So, if you are looking to adapt this to play in a softcore environment and without these hard mods, then I would suggest, for instance, dropping all of this section of the tree, dropping these nodes, and a couple of other spots. Drop some of those nodes and pick up more damage in its place. But those are the adaptations that we make for the Gauntlet event. Additionally, even though I'm not going to be critical strikes, in fact, I'm even going to have resolute technique quite late in the character's development. I'm going to be helping Alira. Again, 15% to all resist is just so much that I can't pass it up. So, how else are we going to build this? The main thing that we're going to be doing is using a two-handed weapon and the ridiculous power level of Call of Steel. Call of Steel is a skill, but it is not a gem. Call of Steel is a skill that you get for free by equipping Lancing Steel, Shattering Steel, or the other one, I think it's called Splitting Steel, the third one. By equipping one of those 3 skills, you will get Call of Steel for free. What Call of Steel does is when you hit an enemy, when you cast Call of Steel, you will pull out all of the impales that are on both enemies and corpses within a certain radius. Doing this, it will give you fuel that you could use for Lancing Steel or Splitting Steel if you wanted, but we're not interested in that. What we're interested in is that these impales that are on monsters and on corpses explode and deal a considerable amount of damage to other nearby enemies and also to the monster itself. So, if you're fighting one enemy, you can smash it you can hit it with your weapon. That will inflict an impale because we're going to be scaling pure physical damage, and then casting Call of Steel will cause all of the damage left in that impale to basically be used all at once, to be inflicted to that enemy all at once, and also to be inflicted nearby enemies in a small radius. So we're going to use the very powerful synergy between Call of Steel and the Impaler. The Impaler allows you to inflict... firstly, Firstly, it has a very severe drawback, and that is that enemies cannot be impaled for 4 seconds after you impale them. But you can still impale a different enemy. The key thing, though, is that when you impale an enemy, you also impale other enemies near them, and you inflict 4 additional impales on enemies when you impale them. So this means that if you hit an enemy and inflict an impale on it, you will get 5 impales instead. This is a tremendous damage multiplier with Core Steel. And the last thing that we're using is we're going to be using some of the various Warcry shenanigans to make sure that that first hit really counts. The whole idea of the build is going to be doing as much damage as it can with the first hit, and then ideally killing all of the trash monsters with that hit, doing a lot of damage to the big monsters, then using Core Steel to finish them off. So that is the core concept of the build. In terms of the way that we're building it, we're going to take all of the good quality nodes near the duelist start area first, work our way down through some of the good two-handed melee weapon nodes. Then, at this point, there's a couple of things we want to get. We want to get these high-quality life nodes, Golem's Blood being one of the very best nodes on the entire tree. We will want to pick up Cloth and Chain at some point, but at this point we really just want to rush down and pick up the Impaler. There's a number of other really good nodes in the area as well, Measured Fury, Rampart. We want to pick these up as at some point. They're just not quite as urgent as some of the rest. Next, we're going to fill out the Bloodless cluster and go up to the really good Scion Life Wheel. We may also pick up all of these elemental resistances at this point, or alternately we might pick them up right at the start of Act 6. Then, after that, we've got the rest of the good stuff in the Marauder start area of the tree, and we can fill in any of the things that we were missing. So, for instance, we'll put off Rampart until a little bit later in character progression. Go and get all of that good stuff. And you'll notice again, Diamond Skin is another example of a node that we're taking, just because we need the additional resistances, and we've got to get them somewhere. We can't rely on getting all of it on gear the way that you normally would on a character. We're probably going to have to take some suboptimal nodes on the passive tree. Diamond Skin isn't that bad anyway, especially given that we'll be using Molten Shell. From our Ascendancy options, we're going Champion because it has a very good mixture of defense and offense. We'll be picking up Master of Metal, we'll be picking up Unstoppable Hero and Fortitude. Now, I don't really mind the order that you pick these up in. There's a good case to be made just for rushing Fortitude because it'll make you so much more survivable before you get to some of the hardest fights in the game, like Depraved Trinity. So that's a very real option to do. Alternately, you can go Master of Metal first and have faster clearing. That decision is with you. However, one thing that I do want to point out is that I've not yet planned for Eternal Labyrinth here. The Gauntlet event, Eternal Labyrinth, is going to be a bit harder to get to than it normally would be. And that's just because of everything being, so much more dangerous. The most likely choice you would take is Inspirational, because it would free up the ability to use War Banner. So this is what I'm going to suggest that you take, but I will not fault the choice of going either First to Strike, Last to Fall or Conqueror. They're both really good choices. I feel Inspirational is just a bit better, but as I say, not going to fault anyone that disagrees. Additionally, you're going to pick up Resolute Technique. This is really solid once you get to higher level. Content. Just the ability to not be evaded is going to come in really handy, especially when we talk about why we're using Ground Slam and the benefits of using Vaal Ground Slam. So, next up, I want to talk about the skill gem setup. And what I will do here is I will provide all this information in a in the text section at the bottom of the video. But the key things that we've got here is that we're going to be using mostly armor gear, and that's going to be because most of the skill gems we want are red. That's going to be easier to chrome it if it's a pure strength requirement. But also we're going to be using Molten Shell defensively. Now, the first decision point that you've got is, are you confident with casting Molten Shell yourself, or would you rather have a cast when damage setup cast it for you? If you cast it yourself, you've got more control over when you use it. On the flip side, cast when damage taken can certainly save you if you're taking a big hit and you don't even realize it. I'm going to leave that decision entirely up to you, The specific gem setup that I'm going to outline is going to be for manually casting Molten Shell. Additionally, you have the option of linking Molten Shell to your to increase duration support. Again, entirely up to you. I am not going to be doing this. If you want to do it, then you'll only need to make some small changes to make it work. So, with all of that out of the way, we're going to want to have a 4-link somewhere. So this can be your helm, your gloves, your boots. Doesn't really matter which one's which. This is triple red green. We're going to want Intimidating Cry, Seismic Cry, Second Wind, and Urgent Orders all linked together. This is your setup for your. This is your setup for all of your war cries. Having Second Wind gives you much more flexibility with it. Likewise, Urgent Orders. Intimidating Cry and Seismic Cry tremendously scale up your next hit. What you're going to want to do, you can go to extreme min-max extension here, but I think the core of it is you just want to cast Seismic Cry first, make an attack or two, and then cast Intimidating Cry, and then just make one monumental smash after that. That's going to be what you want to do at the start of any dangerous boss. In our weapon slot or in our armor slot, this will be I'm going to outline this as a 5-link. If you don't have access to a 5-link, which you won't have much of the time, then just downgrade to by removing any one of these support gems. So, we're going to be using Ground Slam. There's a bit of debate between Ground Slam and Earthquake that goes on when discussing the Core of Steel builds. Earthquake is an objectively stronger support gem than Ground Slam. However, Earthquake has quite bad synergy with the Impaler, and for that reason, I suggest using Ground Slam. Additionally, this gives you the option of Vaal Ground Slam, which is incredible. You can reliably craft your own Vaal Ground Slam just by using Vaal Orbs on Ground Slam. I believe it's a 1 in 4 chance to hit it. And Vaal Ground Slam does a pretty much guaranteed AoE stun. Whenever you've got an emergency situation, fire off Vaal Ground Slam, and basically whatever's hitting you, whatever's in danger of killing you, is going to stop being able to hit you for a while. We're going to be linking this to Pulverize, Impale, Fist of War, and Brutality supports in a 5-link. And melee physical damage as a 6th link if you can get it. However, when you're using a 4-link, you're going to have to drop one of these off. That will be a question of the numbers. It may be that Impale is the weaker support, and it may be that Brutality is the weaker support, and it may be that Pulverize is. I will leave that up to you. Make that decision. The 5-link, though, is pretty clear. It is definitely Vaal Ground Slam, Pulverize, Impale, Fist of War, and Brutality is by far the best 5-link you will get for this build. Okay, so that can, by default, I will assume that's in your armor. However, if you happen to have a 5-link unique weapon drop, and Heist drop a lot of 5-linked uniques, then in that case, you may end up having this in your weapon. If you do that, then your chest slot, you're just going to have to swap around what's in there with what's in the weapon on my outline. So, next 4-link is going to be Quad Red, and that is going to be Blood and Sand, then Flesh and Stone linked to Maim, and then once you finish the Eternal Labyrinth, you're going to add War Banner in there. So before you finish the Eternal Labyrinth, just suggest leveling War Banner anyway, so that you've got it there for when you need it. But this is an option of a free slot in the event that you decide you want to have your Molten Shell be linked to increased duration or something like that. In our next 4-link, we're going to have Pride as an aura. Now, Pride is going to be the aura you mostly use, in addition to Blood and Sand, in addition to Flesh and Stone linked to Maim. However, there will be times that you want to turn Pride off and use Vitality instead. Vitality will be something we'll put in a weapon later, so just keep that in mind. Pride, though, is the default. We're going to have Molten Shell in this setup, and I'm manually casting it. If you would prefer to have it as a cast when damage taken setup, then modify accordingly. Then we'll have Flame Dash linked to Second Wind. Flame Dash is just by far my favourite movement skill. It has been for a long time. We definitely do not want Leap Slam because of the anti-synergies that Leap Slam has with the Impaler. If you accidentally hit an enemy with a small impale from your Leap Slam, which will not be linked up, then you're not going to be able to inflict a massive impale on them with your ground slams. Next up, we have the weapon, which is going to require red, red, green, green. We're going to be getting Blood Rage, Splitting Steel, Vitality Aura, which is not on by default, is only used in sketchy areas when you're turning off Pride, and Decoy Totem. Decoy Totem is incredible in the Gauntlet rule set, so you definitely want that. Flasks-wise, you're going to need to have some sort of anti-bleed, some sort of anti-freeze. You're also going to want to have a Granite Flask of Iron Skin if you can manage it. You may not be able to get a Granite Flask early, but it makes Molten Shell incredible when you do. Over time, you may be able to downgrade the need for the Molten Shell. For the Granite Flask, you may be able to pick up enough armor on your gear that you no longer need it to cap out Molten Shell, but that's unlikely. Lastly, I have not taken Iron Reflexes on the tree. However, I do want you to seriously consider it. It's going to be one of those decisions that you will want to think about and play around with a lot during the time that you're playing the build, because Iron Reflexes will make your Molten Shell much better, but it is also several points to pick up. So just keep it in mind, and especially if you wind up wearing some really good piece of pure evasion armor that just happens to fall for you, then at that point you might want to consider taking Iron Reflexes and just biting the bullet and spending all those points, maybe unspecking some of the damage nodes on the tree or a jewel or something like that, and picking up Iron Reflexes instead. Additionally, you may get to a point where you can unspec some of these low to medium quality resistance nodes, and then at that point you can pick it up as well. Okay, so at this point, I want to talk about some of the things that will be really dangerous and how to deal with them. The first one is going to be the Weaver in Act 2, because the Weaver is a monster in this environment. You do have Decoy Totem, that may not be enough, and I think that you want to help Alira first, because that will help a lot with your resists, and you want to use bench crafts to improve your resistances before going to the Weaver. Lastly, you want to go out of your way to farm up more gear, to farm up more levels before taking on the Weaver, because the Weaver is the hardest fight in the entire campaign in the Gauntlet rule set. Secondly, the Depraved Trinity is the other really brutal fight that you can't avoid. That's the Act 9 boss. And what I suggest you do here is Vaal Ground Slam at the start of the fight. So what you're wanting to do is inflict a stun with Vaal Ground Slam. Then, while the boss is stunned, quickly drop a Decoy Totem and regain control of the fight, and start hitting the boss again and regaining your Vaal Soul Charges. Then, when the boss retreats, you then will need to kill the Scorpions. Do be careful of those Scorpions. They're not as deadly as the Trinity, but they do hit pretty hard. And hopefully, defeating those Scorpions will give you enough towards your next Vaal Ground Slam that you can actually use Vaal Ground Slam at the beginning of all of the phases of the Depraved Trinity fight. That's what I'd like to see be able to be done. I need to actually get there myself to test whether that works. Otherwise, I think that they're the hardest bosses in the campaign. In terms of other things you should be aware of, obviously you're a physical damage build. That means you absolutely cannot do physical reflect maps. So if any of your maps end up with physical reflect, you're going to need to either re-roll them or abandon them. And because you've got Vaal Ground Slam providing you the ability to stun things, you're actually in a much better place than most other Gauntlet builds will be to interact with the betrayal mechanics, which will mean that you'll be able to get yourself some chaos resistance by unveiling items. Unveiling items then gives you access to the Chaos Resist crafts. Those Chaos Resist crafts are basically all you can get, because we're getting no Chaos Resistance on the tree. You may want to prioritize Chaos Resistance on your jewels, something that you wouldn't normally do, but that is a viable option. And you will find aberrant fossils while you're running the delve, not the delve mines, while you're running heists. You will find some aberrant fossils there, so maybe that's something that you may want to consider using on duels in order to get a little bit of chaos resistance. You're going to want to prioritize chaos resistance on gear as well, because if there's one thing that that really will wreck you, it's taking chaos damage when you have minus 100% chaos resistance. Anyway, that's all I got for this build. If you've got any comments or questions, fire away below. If you are looking to adapt this to play in outside the context of the Gauntlet League, then I would suggest either cutting out the resist nodes and going for more damage, or alternately, there's a couple of builds on the Path of Exile forums that you can have a look for, or also the Twitch streamer Zizaran played a build, actually has a full playthrough through the normal game rules, so without all of the Gauntlet mods, where he's recorded that and has put it on YouTube, and I'll try and link it in the comments below.